Do you believe art can change the world? So do I. On this show, we meet artists whose work is doing just that. Welcome to Art Heals All Wounds. I'm your host, Pam Uzzell. Before we meet today's guest, I want to share a few things. You may start to hear ads in my podcast. It means that the podcast is growing, and it also means that I make a little tiny bit of revenue from these episodes. I think this is a really good thing, and I hope you do too. 4 weeks ago, I restarted the podcast after a very long hiatus because the schedule, along with my day job, was not sustainable. To avoid burning out this time around, my current schedule is 4 new episodes, then 4 weeks off, then 4 new episodes, and then, you get it. So this episode is the last one for 4 weeks, when I'll return with 4 more episodes and 4 more amazing artists. Speaking of this hiatus I took, I did a really cool thing during that time. Clarissa Castillo-Ramsey, a painter, podcaster, and life coach, invited me on her podcast, Painting Your Path. I knew that I would click with Clarissa because her path, like mine, has involved a lot of twists and turns. From retail management to graphic design, then going to a church where she fell in love with the paintings in the sanctuary and returned to her own painting practice, then her decision to coach people. Clarissa primarily works with women who, somewhere in midlife, realize that they need to return to a creative practice as well. A few years ago, Clarissa was diagnosed with spasmodic dysphonia. Spasmodic dysphonia is a chronic neurological voice disorder causing involuntary spasms of the larynx muscles. Clarissa, who spoke for a living as a panelist, coach, and podcaster, found that she could only speak in a whisper. Despite this, or maybe because of it, Clarissa is using her voice more than ever now. Her resilience inspires me, not only in dealing with this physical challenge, but also as a member of the Altadena community, the Southern California town that suffered from the devastating fire in January of last year. We talk about a lot of things, including how to deal with rejection as a creative. In the end, Clarissa brings it back to something she herself practices and always urges her coaching clients to do. Give yourself grace. You want to know how you can really help me keep this show going? Follow me on your favorite listening app. So easy, right? And if you really want to give the show a boost, leave me a 5-star rating or review. Hi, Clarissa. Thank you so much for coming on to Art Heals All Wounds. I just want people to know that I spoke with you last year, and at the end of our conversation, I thought, wow, I have so many more things that I'd like to speak to Clarissa about. So I'm so glad you came on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Pam.
In the intro, I talk about who you are, but do you want to introduce yourself a little bit before we get into our conversation?
Sure. Well, what I'll share is that I live in Altadena, California, and at the time of our recording now, it's just after the 1-year anniversary of the Eaton Fire and Palisades Fire, not too far away. And what keeps coming back to me is the healing power of art and how it has not only continued to help me, but also is continuing to help our community. And so that's really the other thing I just wanted to add.
Yes, and I know this is not the main question I wanted to talk to you about, but I do want to ask again if you're still going to be doing the season about Altadena.
Yes.
Okay, so people should stay tuned for that.
Yes, I'll be highlighting stories of people and organizations who've gone through it and who are continuing to support.
So, one thing I know about you is that you are a life coach and you help, I believe, mostly women, only women.
Mostly women, yes, in midlife and beyond. And some men resonate with me too. So I'm not going to discriminate against them. But really, the people who I'm working with now are in the second half of life, let's just say. And they're really asking, am I doing all the things that I've wanted to do? And for so many of them, it is about coming back to their creative self,
Right.
whether they're an artist, art curious, or a writer, or just someone who has a passion project that they want to bring to life. So I help them work through that.
I was reading a little bit about your backstory and the story you tell about growing up and whether or not to go towards a creative field or something quote unquote safer really resonated with me. I teach at the university level, and so many students talk about that they kind of had to really fight to study the creative arts. Can you talk about what this was like for you growing up and what message did you get about going into a creative field?
Yes. So I knew at a young age that I loved art. It was my favorite class in pre-kindergarten, so not even in kindergarten. And I'll never forget having a conversation with my mom. And she asked me, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I was around 5 at the time. And I told her, I said, I want to be an artist. And I just remember her saying, "Oh, you're not going to make any money until you're dead, and you won't be famous until after you pass away." And I just remember in that moment thinking, "Oh my gosh, I've made a wrong decision. I can't do this thing for real." There was also no one in my family that I knew of that was in a creative field. So there really weren't any examples that I could go by. So I do remember thinking I better find something different to pursue. So I did still draw and paint, but it was really more just as a hobby.
Hey, can I share something with you? If leadership has been feeling heavy lately, I see you. Caring so much, holding so much, and still wondering if you're doing it right. That's a lot. And honestly, that's why I created the Lead with Heart Summit. It's not about adding more to your plate, it's about giving you space to breathe, find clarity, and feel more confident in how you lead. I know you're busy, but this is the kind of space that gives you energy back. If you've been needing a reset, I'd love for you to join me. Invest in yourself, invest in your leadership.
Yeah. You made the decision, though, I would say, fairly early to go back to your passion. And I'm just wondering, what were you feeling in the safe path? And then how did you get the courage to just completely pivot and go on this creative path?
I think over the decades, it's been an iteration after iteration. And I'll never forget, in college, I went to business school, but all of my roommates, not all of them, but some of them were in the liberal arts program. So I saw them taking art classes, and I just remember feeling really jealous because in college I didn't take any art classes. I stuck to the business route. And after college, my first job was in retail management. And, there was a lot of great learnings with that, like how to manage people and stuff like that. But this art calling kept coming back to me. And so after a few years of doing that, retail management, I discovered another field called graphic design. And at the time, I was living in Boston, Massachusetts. And in the late 90s, I'm dating myself. I knew I had to get out of Boston. It was too cold. I couldn't deal with the snow anymore. And so my boyfriend at the time and I moved out to California.
Mm.
And I decided to pursue graphic design. And during that time, I also tapped back into a spiritual practice. And that journey took me to a church called Agape, International Spiritual Center. And I fell in love with the paintings in the sanctuary.
Wow.
And discovered that artist. His name is Rassouli. And so I started painting with him again, started doing art retreats. And that was when I told myself, okay, girl, you've got to get back to this creative side. And ever since then, I've gotten back into practice. And truth be told, some years are better than others. But I would say in the last several years, I've really made it a practice. And it truly has been a self-care practice for me.
Mm. What I find interesting about that is that I think a lot of people in your situation would have just decided to really lean into the art as a hobby, as opposed to really saying, no, this is my life. There might be other hobbies, but
Right.
This is my life. And I'm so curious to know, were your parents still alive at that time that you started full-time practicing art?
Oh, yes. And now, like, my mom really regrets what she said. And, no fault to her. I'm not mad at her. She only knew what she knew. But now my father passed away last year, but they both totally embrace this, passion of mine. They see how much I enjoy it.
Right.
So we have come full circle.
This may be something that you've probably heard as well, but parents want us to be safe first and happy second.
Yes.
And you said, where I was reading about your background, that this was all done with love. When your mother was discouraging you to be an artist because she was worried for you that you would not make any money. And I think so often that's what makes it a hard decision, is because if it's done with love, it can really make you doubt yourself.
For sure. And I think that's why this path to finally get here has been one of 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. Let me dabble in some creativity, but not allow myself to fully connect to it. It's taken some time, but I'm embracing it. I call myself an abstract artist, and I love it. I love what I'm doing, but at first it was challenging because I did doubt myself, and I hear this story from so many of my clients. They think, is my art good enough? And they just get so hard on themselves. And I like to approach art from, okay, before you get all into that, what do you connect? What connects you to art? What do you enjoy about it? So think about that first. It's taken some time to get here, but I feel like I've gotten here after doing lots of inner work and just coming to accept that I've got to live for what makes me happy too.
Right, right. The other thing we talked about when you and I talked last week is that since you started, and I do want people, I said it when we were first talking, but for it to be really clear, that you have your own podcast called Painting Your Path, and that you got this diagnosis with your voice. And yes. I'm wondering if you can talk about that, really how it started. How did you notice that something was happening with your voice? Was it gradual? And just your journey from there, working with an unexpected health issue that you couldn't have foreseen.
No, I got diagnosed with spasmodic dysphonia in 2023 in April. I noticed that my voice was starting to shift a little bit in the preceding months, and I had gotten over, I don't know if it was the flu, it may have been COVID, but I was sick. And so I just thought, this is the aftermath of that. And it really presented itself when I was on a speaker panel for an event called Celebrating Our Voices. And I thought, oh my God, how ironic. Celebrating our voices, I can't even make a sound. And thankfully, I had a microphone so people could hear me when my voice didn't get better. And it was really regulated to just a whisper. I just literally couldn't make sound. And that's when I got the diagnosis that I have adductor spasmodic dysphonia. It's a rare vocal condition, neurological condition. They don't know what causes it, but it typically comes with high stress, vocal overuse. They say it's possibly hereditary, and you can get it after some kind of illness. And so I checked all of the boxes except hereditary, because I don't know anyone in my family who has this. And it was super tough, Pam. I mean, I'm a coach, I'm a podcaster. Talking is my business. I facilitate classes, retreats. Once I got this diagnosis, I kind of stopped working because it was too stressful. I don't know if you think this, but I think when things happen to our bodies, there's something going on emotionally, energetically, that you can't not look at. So, what was happening also in that time of my life was that the business I started end of 2020 was no longer the business lit me up. I think this vocal condition reminded me, girlfriend, you need to speak your truth. What's going on? What are you not saying? And so in 2023, I really thought about who do I want to work with and why? And what are the topics I really want to help people with? What kind of transformation feels in alignment with me?
Right.
And I think, coming back to that artist self, I still had more to grow around that. And so fast forward to today, I truly am enjoying helping people, women primarily, especially in this stage of life, to connect back to that creative curiosity. And not even to become the best-selling artist, but just to connect back to self-expression and who they are.
Mm. That's really fascinating. When we talked last year. I mean, for me, I got the diagnosis of myotonic dystrophy 29 years ago, nearly 30 years ago. But really, the person most affected in my family is my daughter. And I really haven't thought about it for myself until recently. And I told you that I notice that sometimes my tongue just completely freezes. And when I do try to speak, it sounds like I've been drinking quite heavily or something. And I've had some very embarrassing moments, especially as a teacher. I leave a lot of my feedback as video feedback. And there is that sense, which I don't know how helpful there is, but there is that sense that there's a power hierarchy, and
Yes.
that if your instructor appears to be inebriated when she's trying to talk to you, it's probably not a good thing. And for me, mine really is exacerbated by stress.
Yes.
Because with myotonic dystrophy, there's myotonia where your muscles freeze and you can't release them. And usually it happens in your hands, but I know several people who have this issue with their tongues. And if I'm stressed, I'm really actually just doing that caused it to kind of click in. I'm kind of really pushing my tongue against the back of my teeth. And then when I try to speak, there are several seconds, maybe anywhere from 5 to 30 seconds for my muscle to be able to relax and be able to speak. I did have that feeling really of, this is so ironic. I'm speaking all the time, and sometimes I am a bit, even if I'm not stressed, sometimes when I'm doing a podcast or speaking on a panel and they say, okay, we're going to each have you go down the line to introduce yourselves, I'll think, please call on me first. Please call on me first, because then I can say it while my tongue is still relaxed. But if I have to wait, and I'm feeling a little bit nervous about speaking, it can happen. And so it's interesting. And then it's also just interesting for me now at this point in my life to realize, yes, of course you should worry about the effect on your daughter, but you also have to care for yourself. And for so many years, I just really didn't even think about the effects that this might have for me. I mean, I'm generally a really optimistic person, which I err maybe on the side of like, oh, everything's
yeah.
fine. I'll
Yep,
be
me
fine.
too. Me too. I can relate, Pam.
Yeah. So I think one of the things I wanted to ask you about relating to all of this is I know you're saying that you knew that you had to get in touch with like what it was that you weren't saying. But also I feel like one thing you're demonstrating is a lot of resilience around. I mean, I'm imagining that podcasting is a passion for you, and speaking on panels and things like that is a passion for you. And that, I know just from listening to your show that I've gotten a lot of value out of it. And I'm wondering if you have any theories about your own resilience besides being an optimistic person. What do you think?
Oh, that's such a great question, Pam. So, I will say I think I had some good modeling, excellent modeling with my mom. Just being a Filipino doctor in the 70s and all the adversity. And I mean, you can pick up on these things as a kid. And just like seeing her toughness, and she's like 5 foot, 5'2", this petite woman is a powerhouse. So I think having seen her just be a strong force to reckon with, and she has truly been like there for me, even though she told me, oh, you can't be an artist. But truly, just growing up in my corporate working years, she also has been there for me when it was tough to get a job. She sent me this plaque that says, behind every successful woman is herself. I still have it on my bookshelf over there. I just feel like, that modeling from my mom. And I like once I have a vision to do something, I don't always know the timeline. I am a huge proponent for vision boards. So doing that has also, I think, helped me just stay resilient. I think with every adversity, every challenge, there's always a lesson that we can choose to take from it. And so I think all of those things have helped me just to continue on the path. And I also think, well, what else am I going to do?
Right. And I love that. Behind every successful woman is herself. I love that. I'm going to repeat that to myself from time to time. One of your episodes that I found really helpful, in this particular episode, you talked about applying to do a TED Talk and that they sent you that polite rejection that all of us in the creative field know so, so well. And I listened to you kind of talk to yourself, like in moving beyond this disappointment. And how do you coach, especially creative people, on how to move beyond the disappointment of the rejection? Because you get rejected so much as a creative person. How do you help people move beyond that?
That is such a great question. So many things are flashing in my mind. I think first and foremost is to acknowledge the disappointment, feel the feels, as they say, and don't bypass it. If you're mad, don't hurt yourself, don't hurt anyone or other property, but maybe you punch a pillow and just let out your frustration. Maybe you cry. I think I cried. I thought for sure I was going to get a yes, and I didn't. And so, feel the feels. I think we get to ask ourselves, okay, what can I learn from this? All right, what are the facts? This is the first time I've ever applied to do a TEDx talk. So, okay, maybe I missed out on something, but at least I went for it. And so with my clients, I just really encourage them to remember this could be your first time having an art show, teaching a class, writing a book. Give yourself grace and just focus on what's the purpose behind whatever it is that you're doing, and connect with that, connect with your why. What can you do to make it a fun process and let off the pressure? Because that's just not going to help. And something that I like to remind my clients is they've done something challenging before. So tap back into those moments of the things you've already accomplished. Think back to the first time you ever drove a car. You're not the expert driver the first time around. So the same is true with anything new that you're doing. So if you can give yourself grace after you have your tantrum and just, don't give up. Learn from it. See if you can get feedback on whatever it is you're trying to do. If you got rejected, and what's that saying? You can be the most delicious peach in a bunch, but not everyone is going to like peaches. So we're not meant for everyone. We're meant to resonate with who gets us.
Wow. That's very good. I think I often don't want to feel those feelings. I mean, now at this point, if I try for a grant, for example, or something, and I get the rejection, I don't really sit with the disappointment. I think I kind of now just like, have a little bit of numbness about the rejection.
Yeah.
Which I don't think is, I don't want to fall apart with every rejection, but I think that I don't really allow that disappointment, which I'm actually feeling, but I just try and brush past it as fast as possible.
Totally. And I get that. And I know for me, I think I did that like just too much to not even allow any feeling except move on. And I'm happy to share this too. I've gone to therapy over my life, like off and on. And the last therapist that I saw was a bioenergetics therapist. So what I loved about that work was whatever emotions I was feeling, we often let it out through some kind of screaming into a pillow, just throwing an adult tantrum to let it out. And it didn't have to be for too long, but just to help myself process. So, I didn't do that until I was well into adulthood. And so it's still kind of new-ish for me.
Right. But I think that's really interesting because I think if I really examine not dwelling with the sadness or the disappointment, I think there gets to be sometimes it's like a little tiny seed of bitterness that isn't processed, which I notice. And it's like, well, again, this is so competitive. Why are you taking it? Like there could definitely be different ways to change a grant proposal, but that doesn't mean that you have to take it personally.
And in fact, I applied for a grant. It was a big one, and I've never done that before. I asked for a lot of money, and I got the rejection letter.
Yeah.
And I remember feeling so disappointed because I poured hours into it. But at the same time, I also had a friend who regularly applies for grants, and she said, just so you know, Clarissa, you are applying for a major, major grant. And I said, okay, great. And so at the same time, that gave me some solace knowing, okay, there's something to learn here. And at least I went through that process. So now I know what it's like, and I can maybe ask different questions the next time. I hear you. It's still a disappointment. Like, I'm not gonna, gloss over that.
Right, right. And then this for me kind of brings me full circle to you talking about Altadena, because I don't live in Altadena. I've been down to Southern California many times. I love LA in general, but I've never lived in LA. I've never lived in Altadena, certainly. But I remember even just feeling such grief hearing about this community and how incredibly special it is. And I would just caught myself. I was about to say it was, but I want to say it is because I think there's always this impulse to sort of sound the death knell for a place when it's faced such a huge tragedy. But then in talking to you and then even reading a few articles, it almost feels like a lot of the community has your same kind of resilience.
I would say so. And this fire, as devastating as it was, has truly, I brought Altadena closer together. I work for myself. I work from home. I'm inside a lot. So this tragedy forced everyone to get out, find resources together. And that's what we did. And I have met so many of my neighbors. There are so many groups that are supporting Altadena. And I'm on a wellness committee at this group called Eaton Fire Collaborative. And I'm going to be doing therapeutic art sessions throughout the year for the community. And you and I both know art heals all wounds. And there's so many programs out there. And I'm really just in awe of how this group, this community has truly, truly banded together.
That is so wonderful to hear. Really. I think on that note, I'm going to let you go. I know it's late in the afternoon, but before we go, I want you to tell people how they can find out more about you and follow your podcast and any other projects you might be taking on.
Thanks, Pam. So the name of my podcast is Painting Your Path, and Pam was a guest, so definitely tune in to that episode for sure. And you can find me on Instagram under, it's really long, it's my entire name, Clarissa Castillo-Ramsey .art. And I would say the podcast and Instagram are the two places I hang out the most.
Well, thank you so much. And I am really excited just to tune into your season on Altadena and the fire. I think it's going to be really, really inspiring. I'm really glad that you're on the show, and I'm glad that you are involved with rebuilding that community.
Thank you so much, Pam.
You're listening to Art Heals All Wounds. Thank you so much to Clarissa Castillo-Ramsey for sharing her path to becoming an artist and coach. I'll leave links to her podcast and Instagram in the show notes. I hope you'll join me in following her season in Painting Your Path that shares stories of the Altadena community after the Eaton Fire. Thanks for listening today. If you want to keep in touch, please reach out to me through my website, arthealsallwoundspodcast.com, and sign up for my newsletter. I'll be converting my mailing list to a Substack very soon. If you hate being bombarded by so many Substacks and news notes, you should definitely sign up for mine. I hardly ever write. Take care and see you back in 4 weeks. The music you heard in this podcast was by Ketsa and Lobo Loco.